Oh, hi there. Welcome to my channel. My name is Matt. I'm 51 and I got back into skateboarding last year at the age of 50. I had not skated in about 20 years. I don't know the strict number, but it's 18 plus years, possibly over 19. I'm not really sure, but the point is it's been a long time. It's definitely been over 20 years if you count to when I actually was skating seriously. I started skateboarding in 1986, approximately 5th, 6th grade, somewhere in there. And I'll go through the timeline here in a minute. So this channel that I've created is to track my progression as an aging skateboarder who has just recently gotten back into the game. But it's not just about that. I hope to foster an interest in skateboarding and people getting back into it or getting into it for the first time, but not just that. I'd like to foster creativity in general, okay? And foster doing good things for ourselves. As you can see from my shirt here, I also work on music and different forms. I play guitar, bass, keyboards, do stuff with software, iOS, you name it. I have a lot of, you can see some of the stuff in the background here, but there's more equipment here that is out of frame. I'd like to maybe cover that at some point as well. So I don't want this channel to necessarily just be about skateboarding, but that's going to be the starting point. I do have other interests that I might cover at some point. We'll just keep it at this for now. Thank you so much for stopping by. Like and subscribe, as they say. I'm hoping to foster some semblance of a community here on YouTube. Maybe make some friends, maybe inspire some people, maybe they can inspire me. Basically, I kind of just want to document my return to skateboarding and kind of, maybe I can add some commentary from my own perspective. I don't know if that's going to be that interesting to people, but I guess we'll find out. Essentially, once I got back into skating, I, soon thereafter started filming myself with my phone and discovered that I quite enjoyed editing the videos. To be honest, that's probably my favorite part. I love editing the videos. I find it kind of almost meditative. And I'll share some of the skateboarding eventually too, but this first video, I just wanted to talk about why I created the channel, where I hope to go with it, maybe give a little history lesson here, a little timeline of my life in skateboarding. But the initial thought of creating a channel, well, that isn't new. I had thought about doing something before, but it wasn't until I really got back into skating and started editing these videos that I the inkling of the idea of actually doing something and starting something, I was like, maybe I could do that. That might be fun. It just sounds, I may be being idealistic. This may go nowhere, but it can't hurt to try, right? That's what they always say growing up, right? All right, so a quick timeline of skateboarding from my perspective and in my life. I started skateboarding in '86 approximately. When I first started skateboarding, boards were the old school boards. They were wide, they were heavy, no upturned nose. The nose was rounded. The boards looked kind of like a fish shape, kind of, like a flat top view of a fish, I guess. The nose totally flat but rounded. The tail curved up like with a kick tail, and it was squared more. I mean, the edges were slightly rounded, but you know what I mean? Compared to the nose, it was a squarer, flatter shape. And my very first board was a Tony Hawk Powell Peralta from the 80s. It was the iconic graphic with the iron cross and the bird skull. But my mom bought this for me for my very first board. I can't express enough how thankful I am for having such a loving, supportive mother. But she got me a really nice board for my very first board. And we were not well off at the time. So I don't even know what it cost back then, but she got, at the time, all the bells and whistles. So, on these boards back then, they had rails, nose guard, tail guard, and then something that younger people may or may not be familiar with, but there were these things called copers that went on the axle. They basically are these little plastic things that pop onto your truck and cover the axle. To me, in retrospect especially, they are silly. They just added weight to already heavy boards. The boards back then, of course, admittedly were tanks. But that was what we grew up with. And I did get into skateboarding at a time that was interesting. I believe skateboarding probably goes back to at least the 50s. I mean, if we've ever seen those pictures of like a small piece of wood with like roller skate trucks and wheels on it. I don't know how the hell anyone skated on those things, but I think they had clay wheels back then. So in the 60s and 70s, there's banana boards. And of course, in the 70s, I think is when the sport really kind of started blowing up. That's when you got, freestyle and slalom and pool skating and bowls and ramps. And then, that kind of continued into the 80s, but things were getting more serious by then. And, some of the people that would end up being like the big stars or the progenitors of the sport were starting at this point now, right? In case you don't know, Powell Peralta, it came from Stacy Peralta and George Powell. Okay, Stacy Peralta had been a professional skateboarder in the 70s. So I don't know if everybody knows that, but a lot of people didn't, younger people may not know that Stacy Peralta was actually a pro before he owned Powell Peralta with George Powell. But this is when the Bones Brigade came about in the 80s. The Bones Brigade was a really big influence on me growing up. I mean, my first board was a Tony Hawk. He was somebody I looked up to. He was a little older than me, but we were like roughly the same height at the time. And anyhow, going through a little nostalgia, not really intending to go down this lane just yet, but memory lane, that is. Suffice it to say, skateboarding was in a transition period. I was in, when I started, essentially it was the shift from what had been in the 70s and early 80s to what it would become in the 90s, which is when street skateboarding really blew up and bloomed. And I was there for it, and I'm really happy about it. Sometimes I wish that I had, that I would have been born maybe a little bit later, just so that I could still skate, as things have progressed to such a level now that it's astonishing, really. But don't get me wrong, I'm really grateful for when I started too, because I got to see this transition from the old school to the new school, essentially. And Tony Hawk and Rodney Mullen and other Bones Brigade members were part of this, but it wasn't just Powell Peralta. There were a lot of skate companies already ongoing at that point. Alva, I believe H Street had already started by then. I'm not totally sure about that, but World Industries, Santa Monica Airlines. I don't know the timelines on some of these. Some of these might have come a little bit later, but Dogtown, Santa Cruz, all that stuff pretty much existed when I was growing up, and when I first started skating more specifically. Okay, so back to the timeline. I kind of got on a tangent there. First board, thank you, Mom. Tony Hawk Pro Model. Graphics probably up on the video if I haven't already shown it. My next board, kind of, hilariously enough maybe, started with Tony Hawk Pro board. My next board was a piece of shit, just straight up. It was probably from Kmart or a big box store like that. It was called a Grim Reaper. It was orange. I think I have an image that I'll show here. It says concave on it. I don't know what the company was. I don't remember at this point. Probably just some generic nonsense. It was a piece of shit. After that, I didn't have any more generic boards. I think my next board was either a Kevin Staub or possibly the next iteration of the Tony Hawk. I think it had the same skull graphic, but this was the newer shape. And in fact, what was that shit called? There was this technology for a minute that Powell had. I don't remember, but it had like these plies of paper, I think, in between the wood plies. There was a name for it, and I can't think of it. Maybe I'll look it up and put it on the screen. But that was about the time that the next shape of the Tony Hawk came out. It wasn't until '89 with the Mike Vallely World Industries board, the Barnyard board. That's kind of when the double kicktail came and the symmetrical board, which we still have in modern street skating. Now, that Barnyard board, which I probably will put a picture up of that too, that Barnyard board was more, it almost made two tails. Whereas if you look at a modern board, they are more rounded, and they look more like two noses, I guess, if you're going by the old boards. There was a phase during the 90s too when the boards still had the old shape, kind of fish shaped, but the noses did start to upturn a little bit, but they were still rounded and the tail was square. They were distinct nose and tail. Once I started skating in 86, I skated all throughout high school. It was like my favorite thing. I skated through most of college too, although, you know, at that point I met new friends and I had my first taste of freedom and I was in some bands and I got more into music and stuff. And so, you know, I skated a lot during college and had some really great friends that I skated with. But by the late 90s, I had kind of dwindled a bit, wasn't skating as much. And then I'd say by 99, when I moved from Columbia, South Carolina, where I went to college, to San Francisco to work for an internet startup that my friend started, I didn't skate at all. And in fact, you know, it's a good thing that we're, you know, separated by distance and time, but because you guys might want to throw something at me, but the whole time I lived in San Francisco, I did not even attempt to ride my skateboard. I didn't have a skateboard because I had essentially quit by then. So the regrets that one has as we get older. Foolishness to have not skated in. If you know anything about skateboard history, the fact that I didn't skate while I was in San Francisco is just idiocy, plain and simple. But whatever, I wasn't interested. I was more interested in other stuff at the time. I still had a wonderful time. San Francisco rules. It's just too expensive. But all right, so essentially after San Francisco, I had to return to the East Coast because it was too expensive and I didn't have gainful employment because the internet startup kind of went the way of the dodo bird. Eventually I moved back to Savannah, Georgia, which is my hometown. I moved back in with my mom because I didn't have a car. It was a bit of a tail between the legs moment in my life. I assumed when I went to San Francisco that was like the beginning of the upward arc, but instead it kind of went more like that. So I returned to Savannah, and I fairly quickly got back in touch with some old friends, people I went to school with, things like that. But I got in touch with a friend named Pat that I went to day school, or some people call it middle school. I went to school with him and we skated. And so when I got back in touch with him, we started hanging out again. And I got in touch with some other friends, and I met some other friends through him, and we started skating again. And eventually we actually became roommates around 2004. And he was the manager at the main skate shop in the mall in Savannah called Outer Limits. So that was dope because he would bring home all the latest videos and got to watch all that stuff. And just had a dude that was my age, similar background, into skating. We used to hang out and just have fun and skate and whatever. But we were also adults, and so we had our day jobs. His was obviously skate related. Mine, I became, essentially from that internet startup, throughout most of the rest of my career up to the present day, I did tech work. Again, fast forward to 2007, I had a tech job. I met a woman and we started dating, and she actually, when we first started dating, she was doing roller derby, but she actually grew up figure skating, figure skating. She competed at the national level, so she was kind of a badass. And for the first year of our relationship or so, we used to go out occasionally and skate together, so that was fun. But let's say around 2008, I don't think after 2008 I really skated much, if any. I think I skated a handful of times throughout the years, but I'm talking, just rolling around. I was really done skateboarding by this point. So yeah, from about, let's say 2008 to 2025, I did not skateboard at all, except for like literally a handful of times. I think that many times, possibly. And that was just rolling around. I had been drinking and I was just unhappy. Not going to go through all the minutia of that either, but suffice it to say, I was an adult, I was in a relationship. Skateboarding was not my first interest or concern. I did continue working on music throughout the years, but skateboarding, I kept up with the sport like a lot. I mean, I still love skateboarding. I've never really let that completely go out of my life. I would watch videos and keep up with it. I mean, all you got to do is go on Facebook and like Thrasher, like some of your favorite pros, like some other skateboard outlets. And next thing you know, you've got endless skate videos. YouTube obviously too has all the great skateboard content. But yeah, so during the relationship and all that, I had just quit. I thought occasionally about getting back into it. In fact, I think in 2011, I tried to skate for like 3 or 4 days, but I just gave up really quickly. That was one of those 5 or so times that I skated in those ensuing years. You know, again, fast forward 2024, September, I quit drinking. I started making some improvements in my life. I was losing weight, etc. Okay, so then in 2025, around April, I bought a full new complete deck and I got back into it, and it looks like the battery died on my fucking light. But where were we? Yes, I got back into skateboarding in April 2025. Had bought a full new complete deck. It was a girl deck, and I haven't looked back since I got back into it. Really been enjoying it. It's been both easier and harder than I expected. I felt pretty comfortable on the board fairly quickly. And the first real trick I got back was a kickflip, and that didn't actually take very long. I mean, it only took, I think, 5 or 6 sessions I had gone out, and I finally got a kickflip. Some other tricks have been harder, don't get me wrong. I just recently battled trying to get a 360 flip back, tray flip, whatever you want to call it. And I did get a couple of shitty ones, but it was a struggle. Mainly it's because I need to work on my, you know, as you can imagine, if you quit skateboarding for any length of time, like I'm talking decades, you know, I sank into middle age essentially while I quit skate. You know, as during this period of time when I quit skating, my life moved into middle age. So trying to get back into it at age 50, you know, I probably had better results than some people would, maybe worse than others, just because, you know, I had day jobs, desk jobs, whatever you want to call it. Was drinking a lot, so I had gained weight. I did lose a decent amount of weight when I quit drinking, and you know, then I started skateboarding and I was getting in better shape, but I think I started gaining muscle because then I gained a little bit of weight back. And now we had the holidays, so I think I gained a little weight then too. But the point is, I need to work on my fitness and some exercise, because I don't think skateboarding alone is enough. I'm a big boy too, I'm 6'4". I will say that having extra weight, especially on my upper body, has fucked with my center of gravity. And I think not being in as good of shape means that I don't have the pop that I used to, because I've been going through all these old VHS videos and digitizing them, and I can see how easy skateboarding used to be for me compared to what it is now. Don't get me wrong, I've made good progress. I'm very happy with where I'm at, but you know, it's not a walk in the park like it is when you're young. It hurts more to fall now. I let myself get out of shape, although I'm in better shape now since I returned to skating. But yeah, I need to still lose a bit of weight, and you know, hopefully I'm going to work on that as this series progresses. But that's essentially what we're here to talk about. Again, I'm going to cover some other subjects eventually, but right now we're talking about this fool right here, this old ass dude. I'm not that old, I'm not elderly, but I do get AARP mail now, so that's great. Yeah, I hope you stay around for my progress and for the community. Please share your thoughts in the comments. I don't know what else to say. Hopefully this is interesting to somebody, and hopefully I can keep up with it and create some content that people are gonna like and find entertaining. You know, cut me some slack. This is my first time actually trying to do this. I want to be excited about it. I did a tarot reading, to be honest, and it seemed to be pretty positive actually about the potential. But you know, that's the thing with tarot, is that it's just it's essentially probabilities. So I guess we'll see where we go. Nice to meet you. Thanks for stopping by, and hope to talk to you and see you again soon.